Napoleon's foreign policy led to his downfall. So the idea in this kind of arrangement, of course, discussed. We need to understand how the foreign policy of Napoleon led to his what? Downfall. The question is two-sided. So we are saying Napoleon I rose to power in November 1799 as the first consul following the overthrow of the Directorate government. He crowned himself emperor in 1804 and ruled France up to 1815 when he was overthrown by the Allied powers of Europe and exiled in the island of St. Helena. So we need to understand how the foreign policy of Napoleon led to his what? Downfall. So we are saying the collapse of the League of Alliance of armed neutrality of Russia, Denmark, Prussia, and Sweden, which Napoleon had created. We are saying today the collapse of the League of Alliance. Napoleon had created the League of Alliance, having countries like Russia, Denmark, Prussia, and Sweden. But when it collapsed, these countries had to ally with Britain to fight against Napoleon Bonaparte. So we are saying the foreign policy of Napoleon led to his downfall because we are realizing in his foreign policy there was the collapse of the League of Alliance. When it collapsed, these countries Napoleon allied with before allied with Britain, and by this time they had to defeat Napoleon Bonaparte. Then the involvement in the Battle of Trafalgar. We have these points. The involvement in the Battle of what? Trafalgar. So we are saying when Napoleon involved himself in the Battle of Trafalgar, it is said he was defeated in the Battle of Trafalgar. When he was defeated, it is this that led to his what? Downfall. Because even those that used to believe that Napoleon cannot be defeated realize that he can be what? Defeated. Then we are saying the dynastic policy of employing his brothers and friends. We are realizing today that Napoleon had a policy of employing his brothers and friends in important offices. When he conquered the countries, he put there his brothers. For example, Jerome Bonaparte was made the leader of Westphalia. Joseph Bonaparte was made the leader of Holland. So by this time, the dynastic policy of employing his brothers and friends made the people to challenge Napoleon Bonaparte. They started rising up against him, hence leading to his what? Downfall. Then in Napoleon I's continental system, we are saying today, Napoleon I's continental system, where nations, Napoleon refused the countries to trade with what? With Britain. When he refused the countries to trade with Britain, it is this that annoyed the traders in France, even in the whole of Europe. They rose up against Napoleon Bonaparte. And it remained a question of time for Napoleon to collapse. Then the invasion of Russia and the Moscow campaign of 1812. You remember, Russia went ahead to trade with Britain. Napoleon, you remember in the Berlin Decree said, you trade with Britain, I attack you. So by this time, Napoleon invaded Russia in the Moscow campaign. When the Russians heard that Napoleon is coming, They deserted the city. They took all the food. They poisoned water. Napoleon's soldiers came. They started drinking water, forgetting that there was what? Poison. Many of them had to die. And by this time at home, people rose up against Napoleon Bonaparte, claiming that he had used a lot of money in the war and they were defeated and their children were killed. By the way, in the Moscow campaign, Napoleon even recruited younger boys of 11 to 12 years to fight in the Moscow campaign, and many of them had to die. Then the defeat of Napoleon's French forces in the Peninsular War. We believe by this time Napoleon was defeated in the Peninsular War. This created a road to his downfall, because by this time all of those that were believing in him realized that too Napoleon can be what? Can be defeated. And this created a road to his downfall because they ganged against him. Then the miscalculation of Napoleon in the Battle of Nations at Leipzig in October 1813. Napoleon miscalculated in the Battle of Leipzig. He thought that he was going to defeat the countries, but the forces were many. So his miscalculation explains why Napoleon Bonaparte had to do what? To collapse, because he miscalculated. Then the involvement of Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo. We have these points, I just explained them. I gave them the points the other time. The involvement of Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo. In the Battle of what? Waterloo. Let me first explain. The involvement of Napoleon in the Battle of Waterloo, where we believe that in the Battle of Waterloo, nations allied together to defeat Napoleon Bonaparte. What happened in the Battle of Waterloo? It is said in the Battle of Waterloo, forces were so many, they ganged against Napoleon Bonaparte. When he was defeated, I can tell you, this created the road to his what? Downfall. Then in Napoleon's attempt to destroy Britain's trading empire. So we are saying Napoleon's attempt to destroy Britain's trading empire. Mind you, Britain was great in terms of economy than France, but Napoleon insisted on defeating Britain's trading what? Empire. He ended up declaring the continental what? System. This annoyed Britain. Britain cooperated with other countries against Napoleon Bonaparte, and finally this led to his downfall. Then the policy of spreading the revolutionary doctrines of liberty, equality, and fraternity. You remember, Napoleon wanted to spread liberty, equality, and fraternity. When he spread these ideas, he had to conflict with so many countries that didn't want French influence. And by this time, those countries sided with Britain against Napoleon Bonaparte, and this created a road to his downfall. Then the excessively aggressive and expansionist policies of Napoleon. So we are saying today, the excessively aggressive policy of Napoleon, he was never contented in his mind. At a time when he had everything, he wanted more. So it is this that annoyed the countries. They joined hands together to fight against Napoleon Bonaparte. And this explains his collapse and what? Downfall. Very aggressive man. You remember Napoleon said, everything is possible. Only the word impossible was written by fools in the books of dictionary. Very ambitious, Napoleon Bonaparte. However, we have other factors that led to the downfall of Napoleon Bonaparte. Number one, the dictatorship of Napoleon I. We are saying today, the dictatorship of Napoleon I. Because Napoleon was a dictator, he was not willing to listen to what other people were saying. It is this that made him to lose the support of so many people in France. It was his dictatorship that at a time when the foreigners rose up against him, the natives sided with the foreigners. Then the violation of the Concordat angered the French Catholics. Napoleon violated the Concordat. How did Napoleon violate the Concordat? By imprisoning the Pope. When Napoleon imprisoned the Pope, this annoyed the Catholics. It is this that made the Catholics to rise up against Napoleon Bonaparte. And it remained a question of time for him to do what? To collapse, which time came in 1815. Then the introduction of conscription in 1812. It is said, the introduction of conscription. What was the conscription? Napoleon forced the youth to join the what? The army. His intention was, he wanted France to have so many forces. But this annoyed some youth who didn't have interest in joining the army. And they ganged against him, which led to his collapse and what? Downfall. Then the decline in the economy of France. Because of the endless wars, we are realizing the economy of France declined and the masses were unemployed. The masses were struggling economically. It is this that made the masses to rise up against Napoleon Bonaparte. Then the strict censorship of the press. Strict censorship of the what? The press. We are saying today, the strict censorship of the press also led to the collapse of Napoleon Bonaparte. It is this that made the Frenchmen to rise up against him. I emphasize one customer Farouk of Uganda quote where we say, believe that you can. Believe that you do what? You can. At a time, even when people are saying that you cannot manage, believe that you do what? You can. And in the process, you are going to survive and succeed. Then the neglect of the girl child education. When it came to girl child education, Napoleon neglected the girl child what? Education. When Napoleon neglected the girl child education, it is this that made women to rise up against him, because Napoleon was neglecting the girl child what? Education. And this annoyed the women. Then the banning of the studying of liberal subject. It is said Napoleon banned the teaching of liberal subjects like history, political education. This annoyed the liberals who wanted people to know issues concerning about history and political education. Of course he banned them because he didn't want people to understand issues concerning about politics. But it turned against him. Then the weakness of Code Napoleon. The weakness of Code what? Napoleon. It is said the weakness of Code Napoleon, where Napoleon in the Code Napoleon overfavored himself at the expense of the Frenchmen. It is this that led to Napoleon's downfall. Then the creation of a new hereditary nobility class by Napoleon. Let me tell you, Napoleon resurrected the nobility class by introducing the Legion of what? Honor. When he introduced Legion of Honor, he took people to the period before 1789. Then, of course, the desertion of Emperor Napoleon I by his officers and generals at a time when he needed them most. They deserted him like a marionette, and this finally led to the collapse of Napoleon Bonaparte.